Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you. One Bills Live is the show, and happy to have with us now the man who will be anchoring the coverage on the NBC television side of things for Sunday Night Football between the Bills and the Giants, now in his 18th season. He'll have Melissa Stark and Chris Collinsworth with him. It is none other than Mike Tirico joining us on the show. And Mike, first, good to have you with us. Appreciate the time. Second, you've seen this Giants team already because you had them in week one. I know you're hoping for a better game this week, but it seems like they have not been able to really put things back on the rails since that week one disaster against Dallas.
No. Hi, Chris. Hi, Steve. Great to see you guys. Yeah, they
Thanks,
have had a terrible start to their season. Their offensive line has been about as bad as anybody, right? 30 sacks, Daniel Jones 28 times. Daniel didn't practice today, on Wednesday for the Giants, so that's always a bit of a concern when you're preparing for a week. And this was where they thought they would have their success with that offensive line, ground game, Jones's running ability, added some speed, but you can't show the speed unless you give the quarterback some time. So as beat up as the Bills defense is, the Giants offensive line has had a very similar run here through the first 5 weeks of the season.
And now with Daniel Jones, with a whatever balancing act with his neck injury, the Bills may see Tyrod Taylor, their old quarterback from the drought breaker. What is the big picture from your perspective? I mean, where do the Giants go from here? I mean, they made some moves, they really overachieved last year. Did they make a mistake by maybe doubling down on the success they had last year rather than maybe voluntarily taking a step back, spending their money a different way on a quarterback, on the running back, and all that stuff? Are there regrets in New York now, you think, from the organization, or are they saying, no, we did it right, we just got bad luck?
Now, the Giants organization is steady as she goes, right? They've done this a million times. The Mara, the Tisch family, they're not going to create headlines with that kind of stuff, right? The fans, as you would understand New York fans, they're very frustrated. But let's go back to what they did last year, Steve. You're right. Everybody who's watching and listening to us knows Brian Daboll, and you know what a great coach Brian is. And offensively, I think he maximized Daniel Jones in a decision year. And they decided, we're probably going to do better with Daniel Jones for the next few years than we will going elsewhere. So you look at the deal that they signed, and it's not the worst deal for a quarterback you've ever seen, right? They're not committed for 5-7 years. And we know all these deals you can get out at some point, depending on how you structure it. But Daniel Jones needs help. He's not a guy who's going to single-handedly carry you to the Super Bowl. So that help was a good running game, good offensive line play, and they've drafted on the offensive line. Both tackles, recent draftees. The center was a first-round pick this year. I'm not ready to say that it's a complete failure. They had two things working against them. Their schedule was brutal to start the season. Buffalo's going to be the fifth playoff team that they play here in the first 6 games, and the only one they didn't play that wasn't a playoff team, I should say, was Arizona, who they rallied to beat. So the schedule was really hard to start. And then injuries. You can't forecast injuries. And when you're taking your left tackle out of the game, and then you lose your entire left side of your line and your center in a game against good teams, you're not going to look good. So I don't think this is a referendum, these first 5 games, on the right decision or the wrong decision just yet. I think the circumstances of the NFL sometimes put you in untenable spots, and that's where the Giants are, at least from where I sit as of right now.
Yeah, not to mention the fact when Saquon Barkley, who was supposed to be that support system for Daniel Jones, is absent for the last 3 games, now defenses are completely keying on the passing game and Daniel Jones with a protection scheme that's not been very successful, and you understand why scoring points is such a trial for them.
Yeah, they haven't scored at all offensively in the first half. They had a 102-yard pick 6 from Jason Pinnock. That was the only touchdown they've scored. They're let's see, I think they're 2.5 games for the most part since their last offensive touchdown. That was the third quarter with 10 minutes left against San Francisco. So they're 5 minutes shy of 2.5 games without scoring an offensive touchdown. So just think about how untenable that is. A defense that you thought was better, a defense that we thought was going to be pretty good, although young at the corners. And that's going to be where I think we'll see a key matchup come Sunday. You thought this defense would be okay because the defensive front was pretty good and they fortified trying to stop the run. But when your offense can't do a darn thing, there's nothing you can do in terms of trying to win football games. And I think if you go back and watch the coaches tape from the Seattle game, you could see why we always talk about offensive lines being a unit and that communication. Steve can speak to this better than we can, but if you're not coordinated and together and communicating, all these twists and games and stunts and who's coming, who's blitzing, you can't stop them. And the second half of the Seattle game, Daniel Jones had no shot. And then drop back situations, Daniel and Tyrod had no shot last week. So if they don't get that group better this week, if they don't get better play, whether people come back or the guys there get their act together, the Bills' defensive front will feast, and that will be a one-sided game once again.
Yeah, if the Bills are able to handle a team like the Giants, what's it look like to you? I mean, is it going to be a defensive thing where they just hold them down and then the offense coasts through it, or is it going to be a time where certainly the Bills have more ways than one to beat people, but what's this game look like to you?
Well, you see, you watch the drive, right, where the Bills go down 2 scores in the fourth quarter in London on Sunday morning, and you watch Josh go down the field, boom, 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 touchdown, right? It's like in 8 seconds or a few more than that.
Right.
If you can jump on a team like the Giants like that, then that's really going to give you a great opportunity to get ahead on them, put them in passing situations, and then your front guys can take off. And we see the rotation. Obviously, there are injuries up front. Vaughn, 20 snaps coming back on a pitch count. Russo obviously banged up going into last week and not being a part of it. But I mean, A.J. Epinesa played really well. Kingsley Jonathan, Syracuse guy, played really well. The edge rushing that is still there can really help mess up this Giants offense. And then you can have one of those one-sided games that we know the Bills are capable of. It's a weird start to the season when you step back and watch what the Bills have done so far, right? It at moments felt really good, but it's 3-2, and every time you turn around, there's another name that you're losing for a stretch of time. So it's been a weird start to the season for the Bills and trying to keep this thing in position to challenge Kansas City at the top of the AFC. And the same is true for Cincinnati. Cincinnati's going through what the Bills have gone through here the first month and a half of the season. So it's an odd start, I think, to what we thought was going to be a powerhouse top of the AFC this year.
Yeah, Steve and I sometimes feel like therapists because, the fans that call the show, they're all bent out of shape about the injuries, and we totally get why. I mean, you got some primary players that are down for lengthy periods of time here, and we try to tell them this happens all around the league. They just don't want to hear it because, you have Bills myopia. You care about your Bills. You don't care about anybody else. But T. Higgins has a broken rib over here. Devon Achane is on IR now for the Dolphins. And he's been an exciting player for them. I mean, it happens everywhere.
And just look at the Giants. I looked at my board from opening night of the players who you have there, and then you turn on the tape against Miami, and only the right tackle's in the same position. So take 4 offensive linemen out in 1 month, right? And now you're dealing with guys who didn't even know each other in training camp in terms of you're playing here, you're playing there. So everybody has these issues. Sometimes teams get hit harder. I am concerned long-term about the hits Buffalo has taken because of Matt Milano is every snap in there and all about ball and really became the defining soul of this defense over the last few years. And Tre'Davious White, you lose a number 1 corner. You don't replace number 1 corners like that. It impacts you as your season goes on, whether you travel him against the top receiver or he's just locking down one side, playing such good coverage in his zone, whatever it is. You don't lose a number 1 corner and get better. No team has that in the league. So those injuries really are concerning ones. And, Daquan Jones was having an impact on this team. That push inside. I'll tell you the one thing over the last 5 weeks of this season and the end of last year that you notice and you see more and more. Teams talk about that area right in front of the quarterback, whether it's the interior rush or the center and the 2 guards kind of keeping that firm in there. And it in Buffalo this year. That guard plays better right now. Right. And that's gonna keep Josh in better stead as we go through the season. That's important. And to go around the league and see that on a regular basis, that losing a guy like Daquan Jones impacts that push you get in the middle. You push them from the middle, the edge guys can get there, and now your defense is humming. So I worry about a key injury at each level here for the Bills, guys likely not coming back, and impacts you're going to have for the last 2/3 of the season.
The last thing we've got for you, Mike, obviously the Brian Daboll homecoming is a storyline here. Just growing up in nearby West Seneca, literally 15 minutes from this stadium. And I'm trying to remember. I knew he took play calling duties away from Mike Kafka out in Arizona in the third quarter to stage the comeback there. Maybe you probably know better than we do since you've done more of their games. Is he still calling plays? Because if he is, that could be a head-to-head head coach versus head coach matchup with him and McDermott when the Giants' offense is on the field.
And we had something similar last week because Kyle Shanahan and Dan Quinn worked together as head coach and offensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons, who went to the Super Bowl, famously got up 28-3 and then lost to the Patriots. They were calling plays against each other last Sunday night. From the Miami game, from what I saw, we have not talked to the Giants yet, but from watching the game, I didn't see Brian talking into the headset to Daniel Jones. So I think Mike Kafka has been back on that, maybe with a little more input. But look, this game is intensely personal in a good way, not a negative way, and important to Brian. So, this is a no stone left unturned week, whether it's helping Mike Kafka in what plays to call, trying to use Sean McDermott's habits and patterns to try to help play call for the week. These are the stories. I feel bad for Brian, and Bills fans don't, but I feel bad for Brian that he's not coming back with a full deck here, with the team he would love to have, the team he forecast to have. Because if you think about it, we're all from somewhere, and there's nothing like coming home. And if you can come home with one of these 32 jobs, which is the top of the mountain for coaches in professional football, you don't get to do it. The Giants only come here once every 8 years, right? The way the schedule rotation most of the time works. So it's one of those that you're going to come back and your team's shorthanded. It's not the front of his mind, but it's got to be one of those like, come on, are you kidding me? Of all times to come back to Buffalo with a team, back to my hometown. But we look forward to sharing the story, St. Francis High School and all the guys who are there, that great connection, and Brian's connection to Western New York. As you all know, because most of you live there, it's a special place. If you're from there, you've got a great connection, and Brian has a great soul and connection and appreciation for the fans of the place. So we look forward to sharing that story of how together Western New York is and what Western New Yorkers are about with the entire country on Sunday night.
Well, Mike, we'll look forward to seeing you. Bring a raincoat. It's going to be a little chilly, and thanks for spending some time with us today.
Always look forward to getting on the plane on Friday morning, getting up there to Orchard Park and seeing everybody around town. So look forward to catching you guys at the stadium. All the best.
All right. Thanks, Mike. That's Mike Tirico joining us here. He'll be calling the game.